It might not come as a surprise that I really like movies. I like talking about movies, I like watching movies, and maybe most importantly, I really like making movies. I mean, not to toot my own horn or anything, I'm still as green as a gamma-powered Kermit the Frog when it comes to filmmaking, but it's a process I've come to enjoy. And honestly, I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a filmmaker. For most of its lifetime, film has had this really high bar to entry. You need equipment, you need to live in LA because that's where all the connections are, you need money, you need producers. But recently, that's all starting to change. Platforms like YouTube offer ways to get your work out there that a young Spielberg or Scorsese could have only dreamed of. And crowdfunding platforms are allowing artists and filmmakers to put stuff out that never could have been published the traditional way. Conversely, though, the studio route still has its advantages. Spectacular epics and big-budget superhero films are still far beyond the reach of your average indie filmmaker. But that doesn't mean we can't try. Released in 2017, Rendel is... No, it's not. This movie has nothing to do with the works of Matt Wagner. Although, how cool would a Mage movie be? Haven't we been talking about that for like years? Rendel is a 2017 Finnish superhero crime drama film from the mind of one Jesse Haya. Allegedly, he created the character in high school, not unlike Luc Besson's original pitch for The Fifth Element. Having spent the last 6 years as head of the Haya and Arwo design agency, he decided the time was right to turn his creative talents towards maybe the coolest dream anyone could have, a self-produced superhero film. After a modest Indiegogo campaign finishing off at around $8,000, Haya and crew managed to finish financing the film with help from a number of local Finnish businesses and brands, coming together with an estimated final budget of around €1,450,000. 1.6 million American, which for a film is still pretty squarely in the indie range. For comparison, The Shape of Water, which came out the same year, had a budget of almost 20 million. So, did the Rendel crew accomplish their dreams and create a superhero film worth seeing? Let's find out. Right off the bat, this film dispels any doubt that someone other than an edgy 15-year-old boy could have come up with it, through one of the edgiest monologues since Shadow the Hedgehog. But for a film like this, I wouldn't have it any other way. And it sets the stage perfectly for a disco montage. I think the music choice here is obviously supposed to be ironic, as we see a montage of poverty, protesting, and children being injected with drugs, all perpetrated by this clearly evil Vala Corporation set to upbeat pop music. Honestly, that's a perfectly valid choice for the kind of comic book tone this movie seems to be shooting for. But when you just smash cut to it from an intro like that, it becomes less funny and just more weird. After that introduction, we cut to a picturesque suburban family. The father, just credited under the family name Ramo, wakes to his wife and daughter presenting him with a birthday gift. A sweet leather jacket that will definitely not factor into anything in the future whatsoever at all. Definitely. Back in the present, we are properly introduced to our two primary villains. Rotika, trashy partying son of the Vala president, and his right-hand muscle, Lataya. They're beating the living lord out of Josh Homme? Huh, they must be Rancid fans. Apparently, this guy was embezzling some of their ill-gotten cash, and they leave their thugs to take care of him as they head to a warehouse across town. But as anyone who's played an Arkham game can tell you, a warehouse full of thugs is soon to be visited by a dark avenger of some kind. It's a solid intro for any Batman-style character, although I can't help but imagine it'd be a little cooler if these guys didn't just stand there like morons. Also, could we get some decent theme music for this guy? Alright, you get to do that whole dissonant music while bad things are happening bit once per movie. Maybe a few more times if you happen to be Stanley Kubrick, but never twice in 10 minutes. We're also introduced to a mysterious blonde woman who seems to be some kind of sidekick, partner, person working with Rendel. She suggests he leave a message, and we see Rotika and Lataya arrive to a fairly metal scene. Earlier on, one of the now-deceased thugs ordered some pizza, which leads to what might be my favorite gag payoff in any movie I've seen this year. It's actually moments like these that I think Rendel is at its best. They help keep the film fresh and stop it from being another grim Dark Crow knockoff, instead making it something with its own personality. Due to a misunderstanding, Rotika's hostage, Kurika, is sent to the hospital instead of killed, which turns out to be a moot point as Rendel shows up for him anyway. We then flash back to Ramo once more, and we see Kurika ruin Ramo's life as only a conglomerate gang member can in an act of revenge for denying him some loan money.
Selvä. No kyllä minä tiedän mitä sellaisille johtajille tehdään.
No niin, mä vähän ajattelinkin. Kyllä.
These flashbacks are kind of where the film starts to lose me, to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of my favorite films of all time are built on non-linear narratives with parallel stories like this. Films like Highlander, The Godfather Part 2, and plenty more all make great use of this technique. But in those films, there was a natural rhythm, with the past story paralleling the present story. Here, though, things keep ramping up in the Rendel story, while Ramo's tale continues to ramp up, but at a much slower pace. Personally, I feel like the film would flow a lot better if we started with this warehouse fight to set things off with a bang, flashed back, and then let the entire thing play out linearly. That way, neither of these plots would be conflicting with each other the way they do in the final cut. Getting back on track, though, Rotika returns to his father, who basically just tells him how much he sucks, and then he goes off on this bit about the watch he stored up his butt for 3 years, or something to that effect. Rendel and the spooky chick work a little more of their Batman magic on a drug shipment, and find some incriminating documents to boot. Rendel also gets photographed by this film's spunky investigative reporter girl, so scratch that off the old superhero checklist. Back in the past, having been blackballed by Vala, Ramo is unable to find work, and ends up taking a job from Kurika, tasked with destroying and filing records of all of Vala's illicit dealings. Apparently, they also just store toxic goop called tarnite in the same warehouse, which becomes harder than stone when it bonds with another material. Apparently, Ramo decides this all makes it totally safe to borrow some and repair his child's toy with it. Aside from that lapse, though, Ramo is a man of good conscience, and he starts prying into Vala's documents, unaware that their boss makes a weird habit of spying directly on his records guy. How long has he been watching him? Doesn't this guy have, like, a company and international gang to run? I wonder if he's been watching him in, like, a second tab, like when you have a Twitch stream going the entire day. In the present, Rendel's continued thwarting of their plans causes Rotika and his dad to call in the big guns, a team of international mercenaries led by this dude named Radek. You know they're all international because they all speak English, even in the Finnish cut of the movie.
Mike? Hey. Yeah.
Hey, you little prick.
I'll be there.
I asked well done. This is medium.
Almost immediately after they're introduced, we cut to Rotika luring Rendel into the mercenaries' hands.
Älä oo tyhmä.
This fight should have been the highlight of the film. Our savage hero against a squad of killers, his first real challenge in the story. But in practice, these guys could have been random mooks for all it matters. Lara Croft here goes down almost immediately, followed shortly by the Viennese axe guy and Radic himself. There is a cool battle where this big Russian dude starts pulling out a bunch of wrestling moves, but he gets cheated as the Aussie merc Stacy kills him with friendly fire. The following battle with her actually has some potential as well, but again, they cut it too short before anything really interesting could happen. These mercs really should have gotten more screen time. It's clear the movie wants them to be these climactic, unique bad guys for Rendel to face, but as it is, we don't really get enough time with these characters to set them apart. A common adage is that a good fight should be written like a good dialogue scene. Each character has different motivations and takes different actions to get what they want. A character's fighting style should tell us something about who they are the same way dialogue does. For example, the Russian guy uses a lot of grabs and wrestling holds. He's clearly a very direct, no-nonsense guy, and his focus on beating the absolute crap out of his opponent shows us that. Stacy is a crafty and manipulative assassin. As a result, she fights a lot more technically and uses her enemy's weight against them in the same way that she would use a man's sexuality against him earlier in the film. It all works pretty well, but compare this with the rest of the group, who only have a chance to get off some basic punches and kicks that really could have been done by anyone. Really, it just makes me wonder why bother with the other three characters in the first place. I'd have much rather seen two longer fights that really built up these guys as credible threats versus just watching Rendel plow through people I don't really have a reason to care about. As Rendel returns home to recover from the fight, we flash back to the final part of Ramo's story. Rotika and Lataya show up at his home, having found out about the documents he took. They murder his wife and child and leave him with a mega nasty scar. It's super screwed up whenever a child dies on screen, but you do almost have to commend a movie that has the stones to show it. Even Friday the 13th didn't mess around with that, man. Apparently mad with grief, Ramo covers his scarred head in the tar knight he stole earlier, giving him an unbreakable mask of vengeance. Now, I get the idea of giving him this partial invulnerability and all, but it does make one wonder how he's still able to breathe or even eat with that setup. Anyway, Rotika returns in failure to his father once again. His dad proceeds to beat the finish out of him, sending Rotika on a final warpath mission to prove himself once and for all. It's here that I just want to say that Rami Rusinin, who plays Rotika, might deliver my favorite performance in the film. Looking at some of the other roles he's played, he seems to have some good comedic chops, and he parlays that into this bad guy role quite well. He's perfect as this clueless slacker always in the shadow of his dad, and you almost start to feel sympathetic towards him until the movie reminds you that he's absolute murderous scum. Christopher Gomeris as Ramo does a good job as well, playing a sympathetic family man who you do feel sorry for as he continually suffers for things he really had no control over. That said, you never really feel a connection between him and the Rendel character, maybe just due to the fact that Rendel doesn't speak. It's not like he traveled the world training after his family died or anything, so it's also hard to see this friendly suburban dad handling some of the fights he does. Now, I did some research and found out Finland is one of the last countries in Europe to still have a compulsory military draft, applying to all men over 18, much like South Korea. So it's possible you could assume he just served his time in the draft and picked up some combat skills there, but was it really that hard for the movie to add a line or something? The film does sort of hint that he's still a nice guy under that mask, like this scene where we see he actually spared Kurika, the man who ruined his life, and sent him down this path in the first place. Honestly, I kind of forgot who Kurika was by this point in the film. I feel like if they wanted to frame a surprising reveal scene, this guy who we thought was dead turning out to be one of Rendel's biggest accomplices would have been a great way to do it. As is, they just kind of drop him in like nothing. And with the totally different appearance in the hood and wheelchair, you'd be forgiven if you didn't even realize he was the same character. The reporter girl from earlier shows up at Rotika's hideout and gets discovered by Lataya. They plan to kill her, but Rendel shows up just in the nick of time. Radek, having survived their last fight, shows up ready for an epic fight. And by epic, I mean... Moving on, Rendel finally closes in on Rotika. Face to face with the man who killed his daughter, Rendel scratches his car and flips him the bird. Okay, that's pretty great, actually. Finally, Rendel faces off against Lataya in the closest thing we get to an honest climactic fight. It's not a bad fight, but it is a little on the slow side. I don't know, maybe I've just been spoiled by too many Kamen Rider movies. Lataya pretty much wipes the floor with Rendel. He even goes so far as to stab the spooky chick, who, it turns out, was Tyler Durden the entire time. There's this whole subplot where Ramo tells his daughter fairy tales about a woman dressed in black who fought evil from the shadows. Presumably, his imagining of this woman signifies his connection to his family and a desire for revenge. We keep seeing her urge him to escalate things. She suggests carving his name into the thugs at the beginning. She kills an unarmed thug with a crowbar, and so on.
See, I think her dying is supposed to symbolize Rendel having to confront reality, that his family is dead and no amount of revenge is going to bring them back. But at the same time, I still don't really get why she has to be in this movie at all.
Rendel doesn't seem to kill unnecessarily, true, but he's not exactly merciful either, so it's not like he needed a voice in his head urging him to escalate. And when she dies, it doesn't really change much. Like I said, she doesn't make him do anything that he wouldn't have already believably done, and after she's gone, he still wants to kill Rotika and Lataya, so it's not like he's really got anything to let go of. Still, this reminder of his family's death gives Rendel the motivation to get back up and take Lataya down once and for all. It's classic superhero stuff, and a pretty gnarly kill. Journalist girl patches up Rendel as Rotika returns home. With his father bearing the responsibility for all their past failure, Rotika kills him and takes control of the company. Well, he takes control for a few minutes anyway. Rendel catches up to Rotika and reminds him that ideals are apparently bulletproof. The fight between a wounded guy and a skinny thug isn't exactly much of a fight, but as the film plays it for drama, I think it works well. Rendel gives Rotika a taste of his own medicine, literally, as he injects him with the deadly vaccine Vala was trying to ship out. Rotika seems to accept this death. I suppose he's happy to die on his own terms rather than his father's. Reporter girl shows up and, alright. Rendel gives a final, I guess, internal monologue? But then why is he breaking the fourth wall and talking to us? Why don't we get to hear his thoughts during the rest of the movie? I don't know, whatever. This movie has some issues. The pacing is weird, the fights just reek of wasted potential, and there are a lot of unneeded plot elements that don't really add anything to the film. That said, there are some great comedic moments that make you laugh without derailing the film's mostly dark tone. And I actually do like the cinematography. There's a heavy use of shadow that gives everything a kind of noir feel, and this movie's actually pretty cool to watch in black and white. And even if they overuse Dutch angles a little bit, it usually makes sense given the mental state of most of the cast.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When I first saw this movie, I was so disappointed. I thought it wasn't a shadow of the movie it could have been, and I started this review with the express purpose of just tearing into it. But then something funny happened. As I watched it again taking my notes, and then made a third pass to get all my review footage, the film kind of grew on me. Rendel is a rough film, no doubt about it, but it's also got this heart that a lot of films today don't really have. The film doesn't take itself too seriously, but you also never feel like they're trying to get this big ironic statement over on you. It's just a movie made by people who really enjoyed what they were doing and did their best with it. Jesse Haya and his crew set out to do something that some would call impossible. As their Indiegogo so aptly put it, they wanted to create a film on an indie budget, but with the boom boom pow of an actual superhero film. I don't know if they completely succeeded,
But I also don't think anyone could accuse them of not giving it their all. You know? That's pretty heroic to me. Till next time.